Welcome to Foundstone Conversations. They're conversations we're having with a number of organisation leaders and business leaders, really talking to them and listening to them what their experience is, what they're seeing and hearing, and what their personal experience is working within their organisation, the broader community, from a social and business perspective. And today we have Wendy Bezzina with us. G'day, Wendy. How are you?
Hi, Andrew. How are you going?
Good, thank you.
Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Now, Wendy is the CEO of Latrobe Valley Enterprise. So, Wendy, we had a chat earlier in the year, and it was really fascinating listening to your own personal story and the organisation that you're running, LVE. So I thought it'd be great to have a chat with you today, and really, you shared a couple of examples of, in particular, around social enterprise. That I think that term it's used a bit in a business context, but I don't feel that many people really understand, perhaps, real life examples of it. So it'll be great to have a chat with you today around some of those. But perhaps initially, if you could just give us a quick rundown on Latrobe Valley Enterprise, who they are and how you've been involved.
Yeah, so I've been with LVE for 4 years now, and we've been in business for 54 years, which is an amazing feat for social enterprise. We currently employ 114 people, and 84 of those have disabilities. So we assist organisations nationwide with our products and services, and we cater for federal government departments, a lot of the tier 1 construction companies, all the way down to schools and individuals here locally in our community. So we provide our services across our grounds and maintenance facilities, our recycling secure document destruction, our business support services, and our sign making department. So every day we work to provide the meaningful employment opportunities for our teams here, and we really try and engage them as individuals so that they have that sense of community, but also that sense of value that comes with employment.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. 54 years is a long time in the sector, no doubt. I'm sure there's been some change, and I know there's been a fair bit of growth even the last few years since you've been on board. From 50 years, looking back on the history that you know of to now, what are really the main changes and the differences between perhaps 10 years ago and now, where LVE is at the moment?
So where the company started out was as the old-fashioned style sheltered workshop. So originally they only had around 6 employees, and then it was just engagement with some of the local businesses, larger businesses here like the Australian Paper Mill and those things, that they were given some engraving machines, and that helped them get sort of off the ground and start doing name tags and industrial tags and stuff like that. So that's how the business sort of started out. But a lot of what they did in the early days was things like putting mosaic tiles on pots and then selling those planter pots. So, but now, probably in the past sort of 10 years, it's become a little bit more, or well, a lot more commercial. And then just in the past 2 years since I've been CEO, we've really looked to focus commercially and I guess sort of maximise the potential for our organisation, and try and really look at doing business like any other organisation, but still providing that social impact. So we're really, I guess, sort of showing the way of how you can be very commercially viable, but also provide on that social purpose. And it's working. So we're a profitable organisation. We've grown exponentially in the past 2 years, and we've employed, even just last year during COVID, we employed another 20 employees. So the organisation, even through adversity, is growing quite quickly.
Yeah, I think what you've just talked through there, in terms of we see perhaps organisations from both the commercial sector and then the not-for-profit and government sectors, and I think there's a lot to learn from how you've led the organisation, from what I've seen so far, in terms of having that, perhaps changing that mindset subtly to being a sustainable both for the community, to be providing, significant value to the community and the people within it, but also, as you said, to be financially viable. And I suppose last year for many organisations has perhaps, brought that to the forefront, hasn't it? That, to be doing really good things within the community and providing value is the number one priority. But at the same time, to be able to continue to do that, you have to really, look at the grassroots commercial side, don't you? And make sure that's sustainable. So I think when we were chatting last, there was a couple of examples that you were talking through around, as I understood it, you looked at what LVE could offer from your different business lines from over the years, and then you looked at perhaps where the market was heading. You looked at some government contracts within Victoria around perhaps there were some gaps in the way they were procuring, particularly around social enterprise. So can you talk us through perhaps that example?
Yeah, so with the, especially with the roads contract, so I had sort of, when I first came to the organisation, just looking at the way in which we were broken into our little silos of departments, and then I guess looking at what would be the next, in 5 years' time, what would be the next big thing that each department would be doing. And so for our sign-making department, I started seeing all the major roads projects coming up, and they're quite significant projects, like in the billions of dollars. So when you looked at that, and Victoria implemented the social procurement framework as well, so part of that was any of the major contracts had to spend a certain amount of money with social enterprises. Now, for our sign-making department, we weren't currently making traffic signs, but that was a little niche market that I thought, well, okay, there's going to be literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars spent with social enterprises, and no one in Victoria or in Australia as a social enterprise was providing traffic signs. So I saw that as a niche opportunity for us to get into that space. And so I started working with some tier one companies and built a really good relationship with Downer Group, DM Roads, and they were fantastic in just giving us the confidence and, establishing a contract with us that we could then go and invest in the business. And so we invested nearly $1 million in our sign-making department. And what that's enabled us to do is take on more staff, but also build that department and then provide Downer Group with also that sort of social procurement side that they needed to, but also their values align with that as well. So for Downer, it's not just about, just ticking a box. It's very much their values align with who LV are and what we want to provide for our employees. So it was just about getting out there and trying to build those relationships.
Yeah, so can you talk us? I think that example is huge in itself. I think some of perhaps social enterprise or not-for-profit organisations and even commercial would struggle to perhaps do what you actually just talked about there, to look at the market and to say, okay, and the community, and saying, here's the limits. So can you talk us through, was that literally, you kind of focused on roads because some of you had some capability in that space in terms of signage, and then kind of drilled into that a bit more? And then did you develop the relationship yourself or through other partnerships to get into those kinds of contracts?
It was really down to just having that foresight and just sort of looking at where we could pivot slightly without, we were already in sign making, and we had made some traffic signs, but very manually, and just looking at where we could pivot slightly, but still fit within the confines of our factory. So not expand the business in footprint, but really just, change our equipment. And it was really just looking at who we could go and contact, and I was literally out looking for who are the big tier one companies. My part of who I am is I often start at the top of the list and work my way down, or go for the biggest fish first. So it was out looking for who the big companies were and then trying to make contact. And Martin Kinski, who's at Downer Group, had offered to come and see us at the Victorian Manufacturing Showcase. And so we literally met in the car park
Right.
And we were showing, it felt like we were doing something not so kosher out of the back of my car, but we're showing him traffic signs and trying to show him what we can do as a social enterprise. And obviously we spoke about LVE and the amazing organisation that it is. And his values very much aligned with that. And it was then that we just started working on how could we make this work and what would LVE need to do to, you know, get up to the level and standard that Downer Group would want to have as well. So, and even in doing that, we've probably gone that next level. So we've gone and got ourselves 3M Diamond certification with 3M. So there's only 3 players in Victoria that have that. We're the only social enterprise in the whole of Australia that has that certification, and also Finsbury Green. So we're rated by Finsbury Green, who are an environmental certification company as well for government contracts. So we've gone sort of, I guess, the extra mile, even though we sort of thought we'll just meet the needs of Downer. We've then gone further and further, and now we're picking up quite a number of the tier 1 companies for road signs.
Okay, that opens up that niche for you. I believe I think I heard another conversation you did, the road down to Phillip Island. You've recently done a lot of those that signage over the last year or so.
Yeah, so they did an upgrade of the major intersection that as you approach Phillip Island. So that was working with Winslow Group. So we did all the major signage for that as well. We're even working with other companies, tier 1s here, Fulton Hogan and those sort of things on the Regional Roads Victoria program. We've worked on the Avon River Bridge project, which was the new, as part of the Regional Rail Revival program. And so we've done all that with CPB contractors, and we're working with them also down on the South Gippsland Highway realignment as well.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. I see, you know, so the Downer as an example, you know, a listed organisation, $1 billion organisation, it sounds like that they have spent the time and they have the people and the roles to actually look at genuinely, as you mentioned, you know, their social procurement policy. From what we probably see there needs to be a lot more awareness of that within the business community, broader than just construction as well. Because I think, you know, you mentioned some organisations, perhaps in the past, have more been, you know, they've had more of a box from a social procurement perspective. But I think I think that is a perfect real life example you've talked to there. I heard there was a quote there from a presentation you did. I think it was last year or the year before at the Grand Prix. People shouldn't confuse procuring socially with a lesser capacity or lower quality, and that really resonated with me. Can you talk a bit more about that in terms of what that means in your organisation and what you're seeing?
Yeah, I guess disappointingly in the sort of the first few days when we're sort of trying to promote the business, it was a lot of businesses were coming to us sort of thinking that we would be a lot cheaper because we're from a disability background, and that meant, you know, they were doing us a favour, or, you know, that they were helping us, but because we had people with disabilities who weren't at, you know, what they would see full capacity or full capability as a normal, well, I don't even like using that word, but a mainstream person or person without a disability.
Yes.
They saw that because what they viewed our capabilities were less, that our price should be less. And I guess that's part of the push for things like 3M Diamond certification and Finsbury Green, is we want to be benchmarked with the best. We don't want to be, you know, seen or portrayed as anything less than any other commercial business in Australia. So it's you sort of got to push some of the barriers there, and a lot of people do confuse sort of procuring socially as they're going to get a lesser quality product. But with us, that's absolutely not the case. You know, we're accredited for quality, environment, safety, so we make sure that we're the best, just, you know, from an external auditor's point of view, but also the best quality that we can provide to any commercial business.
Yeah, I think that's highlighted in what you're doing now, but it's in the potential growth for you in that broader sector. I think goes to and speaks towards that, doesn't it? I think what I mentioned before in terms of, I think there's a lot of perhaps corporate organisations that perhaps aren't aware. There's some good intent there in terms of procuring socially. But are there any things that you're seeing, perhaps that, Downer and Thornton Hogan, some of the organisations you're working with, some of the things that you've seen them doing well? You mentioned they're not just ticking the box. Is there anything you've seen that is working well, and perhaps a bit of advice for other corporates that are wanting to procure socially of how to go about that?
Yeah, so one of the really great things with Marty at Downer Group was just the way in which he would give us an opportunity to do something. So there might be something outside of what we generally provided them, and he'd come to us and say, do you think you could do this? And we would have a go. We'd say, let us have a think about it. We'll try and work it out, and we'll try and get that for you. And then, so it was them giving us just that, I guess, opportunity to have a go at it. And once we would do it, and then obviously it's at a high standard, then he's like, okay, we're done. That's it. That's exactly what we need. And then sometimes it's about those organisations looking to, because for us in sign making, if we're producing a sign, we have 22 staff on board plus 3 mainstream staff supervising them. So the cost of us producing a sign is often going to be more than any other business who may function their sign making department with 3 or 4 staff. So we've got a really large team, but for Downer Group, it was more around they were willing to spend, slightly extra to help provide that social procurement value. So that's them giving back. So it literally is, they're giving us an opportunity to meet the mark, but also, they're willing to budge a little bit on price and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
flexible. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I think what we're seeing even from a strategy perspective, organisations looking at where they're heading and engaging more with the community. I think we've seen a shift from customers and the market have kind of are now seeing through organisations that are just doing it to mark off an audit box. I think generally the market and us as consumers are becoming a lot more savvy, and we're probably expecting more of organisations to say, well, how are you giving back to the community? But we see it even in larger scale technology organisations. If their customers can't see how they're giving back to, in some form, both people or global community, customers are asking the question, well, what long-term value are you providing, more than just a share price or a bottom and top line revenue? So I think there's a shift in there, and I think that what the example you've talked just through there with Downer, that quality is not compromised at all.
No.
And it sounds like from what you just talked through there, Wendy, it's nearly enhanced the understanding of the Victorian community by engaging with yourselves.
Yeah, and I think, people need to understand that social enterprises are businesses that, they're all about trading to intentionally tackle a social problem or improve the communities and provide people access to training and employment that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. So when you get really great organisations such as Downer that, are focused on that, and it's not just ticking a box, it's not just about shareholders and owners and bottom lines, that it is about more than just the dollar. That's where you really get that impact. And, for us last year to be able to employ an additional 20 people within our business, that's a big impact for our community. Like, that's quite large in our community to be growing during COVID, where everyone else was putting off workers. And Downer have very much, they give us an opportunity to, try things and experiment, but also give us time to come up to the mark. And we always do come up to the mark. And that's what, I guess, we've given them that confidence that our product will always come up to the mark. And, we've done that with a number of our other suppliers as well, like CPB and those kind of organisations. We always say to them, just come and ask. Even if you don't think we can do it, come and ask and we'll work it out.
Yeah, I think that, that's, you mentioned values and culture before, Wendy, and I think that probably comes very naturally to you and the organisation because you have those very strong, very clear principles and values. And what I'm hearing, that, again, if those things aren't very clear and evident up front to the likes of these other corporate organisations, well, there's probably going to be hesitation, isn't there? But you've talked through there that, if there is any questions, if there is any issues, that they can raise that and they're genuinely listened to and responded. I think that is another part that perhaps is forgotten, isn't it? That people kind of go headlong to whatever contract it would be, even outside social enterprise. And if there's not the trust and the principles there, then things can start to fall over in the long term, can't they?
Mm. Yeah, and for us, part of the key is building those relationships and building that trust. And then, we gain that confidence from them. And then that also assists us to gain other contracts as well. But yeah, I think really there's, organisations, if they looked at it and thought, what if we shifted 1% or 2% of our spend into social enterprise? It's really not a big difference. But, where we do sign making, grounds, recycling, those sort of services, but there's other social enterprises out there that do things like printing of, paper documents. There's other organisations that do packaging of, pick and pack, so packaging of shampoos and all sorts of different things. So if organisations, the big organisations, look to shift their spend by even 2%, it would have massive outcomes. And it's not just ticking a box, it's actually feeding back to the community. And it could be, back to a social enterprise, but also something back to the environment as well. So I think, yeah, as you said before, the community are becoming much more conscious about, what's right. So what's right for the community, what's right for the environment, and everyone's sort of a lot more educated in that environment as well. So it's really becoming important for organisations to look at how they spend their money and what corporate social responsibility they have.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point. I think a lot of people can learn from that direction. In terms of, now, we spend a bit of time in the work that we do and working with other business leaders around helping them become comfortable with navigating the unknowns and ambiguity. So perhaps, right now, we're just talking before, Victoria is unfortunately in another small lockdown. Hopefully it's not for long. But I'm interested to hear, in terms of, there's been a lot of unknowns last year, and there probably still is this year. Is there any ways that you go around trying to find your way through some of those unknowns? I think that's in the forefront of a lot of business and organisation leaders' minds. Is there anything that's helped you over the last year or bit, and looking forward in that area?
Yeah, I think part of it's my personality. I'm a pretty curious person, so and I'm a bit of an information junkie, so I'm always out looking at what's going on. So, looking at what different organisations are doing, or what's happening in major roads projects, or what's happening in Gippsland. So always looking for an opportunity. So, and we're finding opportunities wherever and whenever they present themselves. So it's also then rubbing off on the staff, and they're becoming curious and they're seeing opportunity in something that they probably wouldn't have seen an opportunity before. So teaching them to be eyes wide open, I guess, and, looking for ways in which we can, if we can't fully offer a service, ways in which we can partner with another organisation to deliver on that service, and, always having our purpose at the forefront of our mind. So providing employment for people with disabilities is how can we continue to do that? And our crew now are really, their eyes open all the time. Like, they're all coming forward going, oh, I think we could do this, or I think we could do that. So it's sort of invigorating the workforce as well.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant in terms of that curious mindset, and I think then looking for opportunities that feed, like you talked to there, that then flows down through staff. And do you think it even starts to empower staff more, that when they see opportunities and then bring them to you or some of your team, in a roundabout way, it kind of empowers people, doesn't it, in terms of the way they look at the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I started doing it and my executive GM started doing it, there was only 2 of us doing it out there looking for opportunities. Now I probably have 20 people looking for opportunities. So it's fantastic, and it becomes its own business generating environment where the guys are out on the ground, or they'll pass something on the side of the road. They go, oh, those signs need fixing. I need to tell sign making. So it's just driving that environment where everybody's looking for opportunities and they see the value in what we do and employing more people as well. So it's driving a really great culture.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think a lot of organisations and leaders perhaps miss that bit. It's the classic. We do a bit in human-centered design and strategy, and that the essence around that is, to try to get CEOs similar to yourself and boards and other business leaders. The old school approach was, I have to have all the ideas. I have to be seen as a thought leader. It's nearly gone in reverse. It sounds like you're proving that yourself. If you do have that in reverse and you're listening to the community and your staff and all the other periphery people around that, it's amazing what can bubble up, isn't it?
Yeah, and the staff feel, as you said before, the staff feel really empowered by that. So, there's nothing better than when a staff member comes to you and says, oh, I've got this great idea, and you go, yep, go with that. And they feel like, oh, great, that they've come up with something fantastic, and, that they get the support to run with it. So it's creating that positive environment where they're coming up with solutions, and it opens their mind to being, problem solvers and opportunity finders, rather than just coming to work and doing their job every day. So, but at the same time, for me, it makes my job easier because they're out there looking for opportunities as well.
Yeah, no doubt. It sounds like it's real grassroots. Great. And in terms of the example you talked about with Downer, there was a significant investment there, like you talked about, millions of dollars. I suppose in your role, you're working. You have federal government contracts as well, and a degree of funding there, but the majority, as I understand, is from the contracts you have and the value you provide. Is there any view you have in terms of organisations working better with state and federal government around how leaders can work better with those going forward?
I think part of it is just being a bit more open-minded and looking at ways in which small to medium enterprises can, be included for tenders. And the social procurement framework in Victoria has been very focused on that, opening those opportunities. So breaking a big contract down where they'd normally go to their usual contractor and just give the contract to them. They're now sort of trying to break down the job into smaller portions that can be done by smaller organisations. Mm-hmm. So it's also similarly with state governments and federal governments, is just looking at ways in which a project or a tender could be broken up slightly into smaller projects. Or part of it has even been ourselves, we've won some statewide contracts because we've partnered with other organisations. So we always look, what's our capacity? We know our capacity. That's not going to meet the requirements of the job. Let's go get someone else to join with us. And in that way, then 2 organisations, have the success. So it's business have to think differently a little bit as well. But yes, government also have to think a bit differently.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You talk, government needing to look at perhaps we've seen all the enormous tenders that perhaps were awarded to 1 or 2 players. I think the mood in the community and government now is that so many of those haven't really been sustainable, have they? Because the size and the scale probably has lost the momentum over a year or 2. So I think you're spot on there, Wendy, in terms of government, contracts being broken down into more niche contracts, and the value that someone like a social enterprise like LVE, I think you're proving that by breaking them down to a degree, that they're able to involve more of the community, and get the same, if not better, result, both from a people perspective and a financial perspective. So I think that's a big insight you've raised.
Mm. And we work quite closely with a lot of other social enterprises as well. So where we, as I said, where we can't do a job by ourselves, we'll try and partner firstly with other social enterprises. So we sort of, make sure that we know what other businesses are doing as far as services go and what their offerings are, so that we know as soon as we get a request, we can't do a certain element of it, we know exactly who to go to. So that you've got to be sort of smart, on the money, forward thinking, and, know your space so that you can respond in a timely manner. Because that's part of the state and government contracts sometimes too, is that really tight turnaround timeframes. So you have to be ready with all your marketing material. You have to be ready with all your compliance data, all of the things that they're going to need. You have to almost have that package ready to go at any moment's notice.
Yeah, it's a good point. So there is a reasonable amount of work getting that foundation right, isn't it? And you've got
a lot of work.
Yeah, and it sounds like from your strategy perspective, you've invested in those things to then be ready. So the what I'm hearing from other organisations that are wanting to build something similar, do a bit of the foundational work to be ready for when they come down the line.
Yeah, you've really got to get that groundwork together. And a lot of the tenders have the same requirements, that they want to see your insurance policies like public liability. They want to see any accreditations. So we literally have it in a folder. It's all together in the one folder. As soon as we need to go apply for a tender, we know the data to go and grab. So it's getting that all planned and preset, having your script about your organisation, what you offer and who you are, having that all ready as well. So it's just having all of that ready to go.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a good. Wendy, it's been wonderful chatting and listening, and learning from, a number of those real life examples. I think that's what the business and broader social community are wanting. So thank you very much for sharing those. Really appreciate it. Last one from me. Looking into 2021 and beyond, what are you seeing in your space, the social enterprise space, going forward over the next year or two?
I guess for us, we're sort of looking at, so we've worked, quite significantly on our sign making department in the past 12 months. So building that business up. So we'll be, grounding that even more and sort of building that. And we'll be looking out to our other departments. So our recycling services will be looking, to jump onto the container deposit scheme, those sort of things. So we're looking, a few years ahead, what's happening in each of those marketplaces, and looking to see where we can participate in that as a business. So, if we need to make investments, that we're planning that sort of, with a long lead time as well. So just looking at how we can expand the business and also offer different opportunities for our people with disabilities. So looking at a number of different, ways in which we work. So, open employment and labour hire and different things like that. So sort of, expanding the business in what we do, but also opportunities for our employees.
Brilliant. I think there's been a lot of insight, both for commercial organisations listening to this, and then other more partnership organisations that you've mentioned that could also learn. So, thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a good 2021.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Wendy. Cheers.